Looking through the quests that are hanging on a town hall wall, you spot one that has a red marking on it. A pilfer needs a hunter to escort him to the Loarta forests, and his quest will expire in 4 days. The small town Ecology is only a day hike away from Delta. You gather everything you need and put it on your trusted Veractona. At dawn you head out into the freezing cold. Arriving at dusk, you see a man in front of the town that matches the quest description. A pilfer, leaning against a log, smoking a pipe, and is covered in bloody bandages. You sit down in front of him, and he exhales a cloud of smoke and lowers his head. That was quite fast. I'm Krepin. Nice to meet you, Hunter. He takes another puff from his pipe. Let me explain what happened. I went up north with a small caravan of miners, escorted by a hunter, like you. I helped out in the mines, getting ironite and other metals for a couple of days. But that was not my goal. I heard that a young Gronkuts was roaming around, letting mines collapse, but also opening up rich veins of metal and colonies of ornithopter, the precious mountain firebugs that are worth good coin if you can capture a queen alive and carry it back to town. Krepin looks into the distance. He snaps back, coughing and spitting out blood. Well, I managed to follow that beast and got lucky. The big brute crushed me almost, but I managed to slip by. I was prepared and acquired a special bottle for the queen that wouldn't melt if she was inside. The caravan left back to town some days ago and had the shelter for myself. I was so excited to capture a queen that I didn't notice that something was walking around the shelter. I peeked around the corner and saw a massive foot blocking the cloudy sky. And then an ear-piercing scream. Luckily, the thick wooden walls dampened the call, but my body was still trembling. The pilfer stopped talking. He takes a deep puff and lets the smoke drag out of his mouth. I have never been so close to a brookter. Only to ones that are lying dead on the ground. But standing, these beasts are tall like buildings. I was scared shitless, pressing my body against the wall. It left, and I locked the door and blocked the big window, and nighttime arrived soon after. I was warming myself with the jar in my hand, and waiting for the suns to rise. At the first sight of dawn, I head out south. I was thinking, if I take the shortest route through the forest, I would arrive here at dusk. The first morning hours went by fast, and I was making good distance, but I lost my footing and hit the bony ground. I walked right into the hunting ground of the Brookta. My heart was racing and I started moving faster. And then I stopped, as I heard his call. I looked around and saw a silhouette roaming through the forest. I hid behind a big tree, reorienting myself again, but the increasing snowfall made it difficult. I couldn't see the mountains, and the suns were blocked by a thick layer of clouds. Steps were coming closer, and luckily I saw some trees falling over where I could run through and escape. I made a run for it, and I heard a terrifying screech. I slipped through the trees and a loud impact and wood breaking followed behind me. I didn't look back, I just kept running. The man looks at you, and a smile peeks through his bandages. I got lost, an experienced pilfer like me, so easily lost. And the snow was making it worse. The cold air was stinging my lungs, and my body was frozen numb. I made myself as small as possible and grabbed the jaw tightly. It was a moment of peace and quiet, and it felt like a dream. But the heavy storms and crushing snow reminded me I was in a nightmare. The Brookta's horrifying stalking noise was right behind me. It felt like the beast had lost me, but this feeling ended quickly, as I was staring into a face in the snow, which stared right back at me, opening his mouth. I ran for my life as the carrion walker started laughing. A sharp pain pierced my head and arm, as if two swords hit naked skin. But the brook didn't follow me. It just didn't. I must have used up all my luck that day, because I arrived at dusk, still alive. Slashed open and bleeding, but still alive. The kind people of Ecology patched me up and sent out my message. So, are you ready to face a Brukta hunter and get my bottle Tornipta back? The Brukta, also known as the fast blood beak, is the terror of the snowy highlands and roams around as the apex of that region. If a Brukta has spotted you, try to hide and pray that it is not hungry. Let's explore why this apex causes so much fear and dread in Tersa. In the upper areas of the snowy highlands, where the lands meet the mountains, is the Laerta forest. The territory where the Brukta is found, but that doesn't mean that the fast bloodbeak only hunts in that forest. Most documented attacks are in the open fields where the mudharts are grazing, or in the forests where the blockhoods meet this fierce foe. What makes this swift killer even more frightening is its activity throughout all the seasons. But it lowers its overwhelming presence around winter. It is known that the Brukta will eat anything that is smaller than themselves. So, if you need to look up, you are on its menu. But there is a smaller beast that is sitting on top of the giant crest of the Brukta, calling out hiding prey to lure the terror to its victim. The Grotta watches the Brukta from a safe distance, doing the heavy work and feed on the remains after the apex is done. Standing tall between 4.5 and 5.5 meters and reaching a length of 7 meters, roughly weighing between 1 to 1.5 tons, where the most weight are the muscles that support the heavy weight of their enormous skull. That is used to kill prey with one devastating blow and allows the Brukta to regulate its temperature. On the top of the skull sits a long crest, which is also the nose of the Brukta. Inside is a muscle that regulates airflow and can block or open a short passage for the cold air to enter the body, cooling it down if the bloodbeak is enraged in a hunt, or let the air flow through a long chamber that is filled with hairs. Cold air that passes through the dense path is heated up and lets the Brukta stay warm even if the temperatures are below 30 degrees Celsius and lower. The differences between male and female are that the males have a bigger crest and their necks are covered with scars from fighting each other. The crest is also a horn to create sounds that travel long distances. The most iconic and known sound of the Brukta is its long horn trumpet-like call. This call signals other Brukta to stay out of the territory. There are also shorter calls that are used by the Brukta. The Brukta emits chirps when he is near mates or brooklings. Speaking of mates, around mid-fall the breeding season starts for the bloodbeaks and the males roam the pike birch forests, emitting deep calls to signal potential females that they are interested. Encountering other rivals, the Bruckner displays his yellow jaw to scare off opponents. If that threat display shows no effect, they engage in a fight, clawing and ripping out feathers, trying to wound the other male, until one of them retreats. Some of these fights can be fatal. If they meet a potential mate, the male Bruckner will rear up its head and clacker with his beak. This shows the health and strength of the male. If the female shows interest, they start a dance, called the fencing waltz. The female leads the male and they keep always contact with their beaks. The soft chirps also appear in that ritual, and the male is very careful not to step on the female's feet. The female tests the male's endurance with the dance, and if the male keeps pace, they will mate afterwards. The eggs are getting laid in the middle of winter. Brooklings hatch after 50 to 60 days around the start of spring and will stay with the mother for 2 years until they are big enough to hunt on their own. Brooklings hatch with a coat of white feathers and a darker beak, mimicking the small birds that are near or on top of Bruckner. These small balls of white are called grotter, which translates into carrion mocker. Grotter lay eggs and hatch in the same nest as the Bruckner, warning with calls if a nest thief is close and give younger brooklings a higher chance of survival. Bruckner are solitary beasts, and the male will kill younger Bruckner in their territory, but they will always carry a small flock of grotter on their crest. These will sit and defecate on the Bruckner, giving him a natural camouflage and marking him with their flock scent. The Bruckner has a very good eyesight and can spot movement far away. Its smell is not the strongest in the snowy highlands, but for that the grotter plays a huge part in the Bruckner's daily activity. Hunting down prey on an open field is an easy task, and mudhuts have little chance on their own, only scaring off their opponent if they huddle together and form a wall of horns. But if the mudhuts is alone, the Bruckner attacks by charging the Goliath red horn and startling the herbivore, opening up an opportunity to flank it and thrust the beak into the lower back of the mudhuts, breaking bones and mostly paralyzing its hind legs, making the killing part as safe as possible by exhausting and letting the mudhuts bleed out with multiple claw strikes. If the hunting ground is a forest with opportunities to hide, the grotter will make it almost impossible. It will follow the prey and wait until the Bruckner will start its terrifying humming call. The low bursts of sound invoke panic in most beasts, making the prey more jumpy if surprised. The carrion mocker will hide from the prey and sneak up close to it, then calling out with a haunting laughter, signaling the Bruckner where the prey is. So, if you spot these scavengers, know that the Bruckner is always very close. Hunting down a Bruckner is only a task for very experienced hunters. Finding a Bruckner is not that difficult. They are everywhere and their footprints are easy to spot. But due to their big size and long legs, they will move far distances quite fast. Following bloodhuts on open fields can result in encountering a bloodbeak, or listening to their calls around fall in the Lifeless forests. Cutting down a Lifeless to make noise can lure in a Bruckner. It's known that bloodhuts topple these trees over to feed on the soft tips on bigger pike birches, which indicates for the Bruckner that bloodhuts are near. Also, looking up into the sky, you can spot grotter flying around. A fast bloodbeak is always nearby. Using fire or other light sources can also make a Bruckner notice your location, due to its impressive eyesight. Tools useful for a Bruckner hunt. Sturdy trip traps, but the Bruckner will avoid them if it's not on a stampede. The feathers of the bloodbeak are easily flammable and scare the beast if lit on fire. Poisonous gas works very well on a stampeding Bruckner. It will likely not heat up the air in the crest, and the toxins can enter the body faster without getting filtered. Fresh carrion can be used to lure grotter in and trap them in a net, making it harder to follow you if you need to retreat from a hunt or hide to heal up. If you prepared yourself and tracked down a Bruckner, you will face the dominant apex of the snowy highlands. This beast is one of the most vocal ones in the snowy highlands. Its horn can be deafening if close to it. The Bructa will assault you relentless, almost not running out of stamina, with beak attacks that can pierce armor and deadly claw swipes that tear flesh from bone. If a bloodbeak uses its head to tackle you, it will likely try to pin you down with one of its claws and stab you with the beak multiple times while you are trying to escape its grasp. While the Bructa is equipped with deadly weapons, its main body is very defenseless, and its head is not indestructible. Its crest, aka nose, can be broken to put the Bructa into a constant stampede, exhausting the beast faster and making it more prone to traps and negate screams. Or the claws can be broken to lower the damage of the swipe and kicks. The tip of its beak can also be broken off, reducing its general deadliness. Bludgeoning attacks can hurt the Bructa a lot. The crushing blows can harm legs and do high damage to the crest, but the dense coat of feathers will soften most of your strikes. Piercing weapons pass through all the feathers and hit vital organs. Unfortunately, the neck is used to piercing damage from in-species fightings. The head and legs are armored and resist all piercing attacks, but an open mouth can be a critical weak spot. The teeth of the saw can easily rip through the thick neck and get rid of the feathers, removing the armored scales on the legs too. But the smooth skull has no area where the spikes can hook into. The greatsword has a bit of a hard time against the Bructa. Damaging the neck is hard, again due to the Bructa fighting each other, and the body is covered in feathers that first need to be cut off. But the greatsword's ability to run and charge attacks can be useful to position behind the beast. The Bructa is equipped with deadly weapons that can be used to smith perfect hunting weapons. The armor is surprisingly light but can resist heavy blows. This weight reduction will exhaust the hunter slower and give stronger protection against piercing and slashing damage. For the heavy mace, 5 Bructa feet were fused together to form a giant club that is light in weight but also packs a heavy punch. The great rapier uses the deadliest part of the Bructa to its advantage. The whole skull is used to deliver deadly thrusts and guard with the bony scales of the head. The giant claws of the bloodbeak, enforced with jagged blades, makes this cleaving saw rip through every creature's hide. The greatsword is made out of the light but sturdy beak of the Bructa. Fortified with metals from the snowy highland mountains, gives the sword an edge that will cut through stone. The Bructa, the terror of the snowy highlands, that thrives with one of the smallest beasts in this cold and harsh environment. The fast bloodbeak is well observed and rarely will target humans, because the area where it lives and hunts is known and is easily avoidable. But sometimes it will ambush caravans and attack the cart-pulling beasts, or villagers that chop down pike birch trees, which is a Mudhut's behavior and will lure in a Bructa. Let's begin with the beast brief. Continuing with the beast roster for the Snowy Highlands, I needed an apex, something fast, deadly that can overpower the tankier herbivores. It also uses the Snowy Highlands open fields, but also can hunt in the more foresty areas. I personally never painted anything with feathers, so I wanted to challenge myself and decided to making something bird-like and more monstrous than just a simple cow bear like the Bloodhuts. Or the Ecology, which is just a giant Komodo dragon lizard with a cobra head on top. Back to these sketches I shot in the Ecology video. 5 of these doodles turned out to be full concepts. And we can see the Bructa and the Grotta. And the Grotta is almost completely unchanged. He was perfect in a doodle. I started with some head sketches mixing birds and lizards together. I really liked B for the crest, which gave the creature an interesting shape and look. E has a more bulkier look that was nice, and and F used crocodile parts for the skull, and the curved beak was also quite interesting. I continued to mix the head shapes together and sketch some body types, trying to make them as different as possible, but still aiming for a tarot bird look. I settled on the big neck and long legs, making his body, or like his chest area, look proportionally small to all the other features. The crest got more concept, some of them showed sound organs, and I also like the idea that the crest is mirroring the beak itself. I started to give the guy some feathers, and I noticed giving it wings that are a little bit too big made it look like it could fly. I didn't want that to happen, so the Brukta got the small chicken wings treatment. Back to the crest, I wanted to convey speed with the creature, and the crest needed to support it. So the middle bottom row was my favorite. Elongated, slim, really hammered home that this creature hunts by running down its prey. The color concepts were harder than I expected, and never had I designed a bird or used colors that wasn't just raw guts and flesh due to my horror background. I liked the last two, especially the vulture coloring, but it didn't show that the environment is cold and harsh. The white and black color was better, but also very boring, so I went more for a cold blue with a mix of white and the pattern of snow running down his head and neck. I really liked the more darker version, making the apex look more menacing, and the pattern was unchanged. Stephen Oakley asked me, and I quote, "That bird fella's head covered in eyes, or is it bird poop?" And saying it can look more evil if it has its baby birds on his head, which turned into the concept of small birds sitting on top of this giant predator's head in a symbiotic relationship like the oxpecker. So the weapons of the Brukta were my first designs, even before I created the starting weapons. They really looked like Monster Hunter weapons. I kinda didn't want them to look like that, but I also really liked them. My general decision was to make them look grounded and always showing monster parts. I didn't want them to feel out of place in this more darker setting. Here's the cleaving saw, where the head saw was a close contender, but the Bigfoot claw won, in my opinion. The hammer got some wacky designs. I tried to make the head work and used some feathers too, but nothing was looking too good, and I used the big main toe 5 times and turned it into a giant mace. Some crazy greatsword ideas that went really against my grounded world building rule. I made another design almost 8 months later, and it turned out simple but practical, and I really enjoyed it. These are some spearhead ideas for a non-existing spear weapon. It got replaced by the Great Rapier, and here are the even simpler Great Rapier concepts. They feel kinda same, but I like the skull more than the crest. These were the first armor concepts I had done for this project, very rough and very noisy concepts. The player character anatomy was a little bit too thin for my taste. What I also noticed that I was just slapping on some beast parts on top of the armor without thinking about the general shape. So these concepts looked jumbled together and were not really showing the speed and danger like the Brukta does. I still continued with these designs, made some line art and fixed some of the shapes, but they still felt off. I tried again, but this time making a very simple and boring design, aiming to get away from the Monster Hunter aesthetic, but this was a big mistake. I rented out the full design and I was fine at first, but I think making a grounded, cool design is more appealing to the player instead of something that looks believable but insanely boring. It's a simple design, and simple can be cool, but this one is just not cool or interesting. So I made some new sketches, a bit more bulky and having more time to learn about armor and design in general. These are like 8 months apart. I really like the middle one with the pointy head, but the bird head was fun and resembled the Brukta way more. I will definitely pick up the pointy head in a different design for a different beast that represents the shape design more. I mixed all of these concepts together, mostly the second and third one. After that I rented out the first, made a clean version and added the bird shit later. This armor turned out pretty well and I was done in only 3 days. And I was surprised how much the bird shit is representing the Brukta. I think the Brookta works pretty well as an apex, big, fast, but not too edgy and pretty grounded also. The only monstrous part is his size and the oversized head also, but the rest is pretty normal. Still, I like him and I can't wait to make maybe some rare variants for this guy. Thanks for watching. This was a ton of work. I didn't expect it to do so much for the Brookta. Luckily, I had some weapon sketches done and the Brookta and Grotta were rendered out months ago. So I had some less work I needed to do, but still I gave the big bird a small update and he came out great. And again, you can vote for the next beast that I should cover. There are only two this time, the Gourmet of Stone and the King of Skin. So you have 2 weeks of time when this video releases, so get on the server and vote for the next beast we should cover. A giant thanks to my lovely monthly Giga Chats who are supporting this project over on Coffee. We have Pislow Wizard, Draz, Professor Oaks, Embrick, Voidbrush, and one of the craziest people, Urged. Thanks again for watching. I wish you a good Christmas time and a happy new year, and I will see you in the next video in the next year. Goodbye.